Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today I'm doing running backs. Running backs, one of the more difficult evaluations in the NFL draft time, at least for me, I would say. Definitely one that it's really hard to gauge because running backs, more so than not, there's two reasons really. Number one, everything about a running back's success is going to be judged on the offensive line around them. And that's true for almost any running back. So whatever status you want to put a running back at, if they get behind the right offensive line, they can look great. And we've seen examples of that all over. I mean, you take Corey Clement, for example, out of Wisconsin last year. He was an undrafted free agent. Now, that was more so because of some character issues where his teammates and his coaches really didn't like him. And no matter how much talent you got, that's going to hurt you in the draft. So anyway, either way, you'll look at that and say, wow, okay, that guy obviously doesn't have great skills. He's went undrafted. But then he goes to the Eagles as an undrafted free agent. And we see not only was what he was able to do in the regular season, but in the postseason and the Super Bowl being a key part to that offense. And so again, who's to say where you rank them, they still can come out and do great things because it's going to be a function of that offense that you get into. And then the second thing that makes a running back evaluation tough is that it's mostly physical traits. It's not technique. Running backs is more so, what's their physical ability, and you can't really measure vision and things of that nature. And there's certainly different techniques that running backs have, but for the most part, that's not what the position is built on. And that's not going to determine how good a running back is. So it's a very difficult evaluation. You really just watching characteristics or physical characteristics, and the combine helps a lot with running backs and things of that nature because you can't measure vision and things in different intangibles. You really only could measure what they're doing on the field as far as their physicality. So with that, my gradable traits for running backs is speed, agility, and power, of course you would say. Of course, I do look at the blocking and the receiving and all that good stuff. But as far as what's graded, and running backs is kind of the shortest written evaluation. You still can take away a lot from the player, but the written evaluation is pretty short because, again, it really, those three things really determine a lot about a running back because regardless of how much skill you have, you got to have somebody give you the holes in the lanes, and then what your physical ability is determines what you're able to do with those lanes, and that's what makes up a great running back. So anyway, let's dive into it because it's definitely a lot to look at. And by the way, real quick, the real grade is going to be Seattle Seahawks. So stick around at the end. We're going to look at the Seahawks draft from 2015 and give it a grade. But furthermore, that's not what I meant. But looking at Saquon Barkley, who a lot of people consider the number one player in the draft. So Saquon, real quick, I think he has every bit of physical talent that people say he does. I personally don't think he's the number one back. I wouldn't even say he's the best back I've seen in the last few years. If he were to come out last year, I'm not sure that he would have been over Leonard Fournette or even Dalvin Cook, but I really do like Saquon. I think he has some great top-end speed. Of course, he's got some great power, and he does a little bit of everything. I don't think anybody in this draft has great pass blocking. We haven't seen that in a while, but I definitely think as far as the average, he's better than that. And then he can give you a lot in his receiving. Even though he can run a lot of routes from lining up out wide, you can see that he has natural hands. Now, the thing with Saquon that worries me a little bit is his stamina, because you see guys that are built low to the ground and have a lot of thick muscle. they usually get tired pretty quickly. That muscle is pretty heavy, and you could tell by looking at him in the way he works out that he packs on, heavy muscle instead of lean muscle, and that he is already built low to the ground, and that pounding kind of wears him out quicker, as opposed to guys that have more lean muscle and stride more, and he's more pounding to the ground. So I've noticed that, and I wonder if it'd be better for him to actually lose some muscle and kind of lean out a little bit. Not to say lose all of it. I just think his lower half might affect his stamina a little bit. But yeah, pretty much that. And then of course the pass blocking. Then we go down to Darius Geis from LSU. And this was a guy, I know he's getting a lot of hype. I wasn't that impressed with him. I think he has pretty decent vision. I think he's a pretty good pass option also. But he's a downhill runner. He doesn't create much for himself. I mean, he might try to, but I think when he is best is when he has a gap and he hits it downhill. But I don't think he tops out speed-wise. Now, again, these guys could change definitely over the offseason, and as you get into the combine, we'll get a better idea. But on tape, I just didn't see him with a second gear. I thought he had above average speed when he got in the open field. And same thing for his agility, but for his size, he definitely had a lot of power. He definitely runs with a lot of physicality. So I like that. I like his balance. He's pretty good there, but I think he definitely has some limits when it comes to his speed. Then we go down to Rashad Penny, San Diego State. This guy reminds me of a couple people, but he's more of a slasher. And he can go downhill, but he has pretty good quickness. I really like his vision. He was patient. He won't. I think Saquon, that's more of a guy that as soon as he gets the ball, he's going from 0 to 60, which is a good trait that you can go that fast. But I think Rashad's more a patient runner, where he's going to wait for it to develop and then hit the gas. So I like his vision. I like the way he navigates. And then I do like the way he comes out of the backfield for a receiving threat. I like his hands and everything. And he's kind of a home run hitter as well when he gets the ball. He doesn't have as much power, but I think his power is good enough. I mean, for his size, he could definitely get better. But I think his game is more speed and dash. Then we got Ronald Jones out of USC. Ronald reminds me of Tevin Coleman coming out of Indiana. He's more of an upright runner. He's definitely a slasher, but he runs with that upright position. He has those loose hips that can make that cut and then go downfield. So I like his explosion. And again, this is a guy that has some great agility. I think his feet are pretty quick, and he's good at making yards out of nothing. And he does have some speed, I think, once he gets into the open field. But he does play with power. He's 6 foot, so he's got a big frame. But he's only 200 pounds. I think he can put on weight. But I really like his game, and I liked what I saw from him out of the backfield. He's pretty explosive when he gets the ball. And it doesn't take much time for him to turn on the gas either, which is a common theme for a lot of these running backs this year. Then we get down to the Georgia guys, Sony Michel. Now, Sony Michel, I know they're going like thunder and lightning with him and Chubb, but I don't see Michel as that fast of a guy. The thing with Michel is he's a lot quicker than he is fast. And I think people get that confused because he can dance a lot. He can his feet are very quick. He could make yards out of nothing and whatnot. But once he gets in the open field and once he's out running someone, I honestly have him graded out around the same speed as Nick Chubb. I don't think he has a second gear. I think he has good burst off the initial run, and he could get lateral, and he can outrun people to the side, or make somebody miss. But I don't think him getting vertical with his speed is that fast as people think. And he has a lot of power. I think he's built very similar to Nick Chubb. He's just a lot quicker. And then, of course, get down to Nick Chubb. And this is definitely more north and south runner type guy. He doesn't like to cut a lot. You might get one good cut out of him, but he's definitely more the blunt instrument. And he's trying to get those tough yards. And he does, Nick Chubb, between him and Michelle, I would not take Nick Chubb because Nick Chubb lacks the agility. He lacks way less agility than Sony Michel. And I think their power is about the same. So between those two, I think Sony Michel is the clear better option. Then he's a better receiving threat too. So Nick Chubb, I think he's pretty average at receiving and he's average at blocking. I like his vision, but it's just good. It's kind of middle of the road prospect for me. Sony Michel is clearly the better option, I would say, out of those two. Then we get down to Kerryon Johnson from Auburn, an interesting guy. Not built that, if you look at the numbers, he's not built that big, but man, he's a power runner. He's definitely a power runner. I gave him a 4.5 power. The way he runs and just, people fall off of him. He's strong. So even though you might look at the numbers and his build and say, okay, this is a former receiver from high school, he clearly has the physicality to play bigger than his stature. And I think he's a downhill runner. You'll see some stuff with him bouncing around and dancing, but I think he's a downhill at best. When he's able to get that gap and then just make his move, I think he's best. He could pick up yards. Excuse me. He can accelerate quickly and pick up yards, but I think his speed tops out pretty fast. He's not that high end of a speed guy. And I don't think he has great agility either. So I do like him better when he's hitting one gap. Now, of course, I think he's a good receiving threat. This year was a little tough because I know he was injured, so he didn't look as he probably would have. But as a rule, I don't go backwards in tape. I always look at this year. And so he might regain that speed, might not. I know he had a hamstring, but I still think as a receiving option, he's going to be a longer back. He's going to have more of a range, and his hands weren't as great as I thought for a former receiver, but he's still going to give you a little more in the passing game than a regular running back would. So, interesting character. Of course, they used him to pass the ball and do different things. So, I think he definitely has a lot of upside. Then we get to Josh Adams at Notre Dame. Josh, honestly, I was expecting to be a little more impressed by Josh just from a couple highlights I've seen and then hearing about him. But still a pretty good runner. He too, much like Ronald Johnson, is an upright runner, 6'2", big dude. So he has that upright one cut type of style where he isn't going to dance around too much with you. But when he hits the hole, he hits it fast. I think his vision's okay. He'll run into a wall and sift around until he finds something. But once he finds it, once he sees it, he hits it fast and he can be gone. Definitely a home run hitter. I think he gets to a second gear in the open field, but I got him at a level 4 speed. I don't see him as like a 4.3 type guy. So even though he hits that second gear on slower defenders, I don't think he has, elite NFL speed. And then, of course, really good receiving threat out of the backfield. Good balance. I like him. I mean, I know he had the injury for a little bit of the year with his knee. I like him overall. His consistency, though, that's something I look at Josh Adams, or his effort, the consistency in his effort. I kind of look at him and I wonder if he's always going hard each play. But that's just kind of an outside opinion. And then we go to Royce Freeman. Now, this one, a lot of people are hyped on. I didn't see it. I really saw average speed and average agility and above average power for somebody that's almost 240 pounds and 6 foot. I felt like he didn't play with as much power as I wanted to see. And he didn't play with as much balance as I wanted to see either. That zone type system they ran, it definitely forces you to have better vision than most. So I definitely think he has pretty good vision, but outside of that, he wasn't that great of a receiving threat. He wasn't a home run hitter. His speed tops out really fast. I didn't see a lot to like about Royce Freeman outside being an average back. Then we get to Akrum Wadley from Iowa. Now, this is a guy that I was really impressed by. We talking about one of the more high-end speed, agility type guys in the draft. Now, he does lack power. He's under 200 pounds. But I think he definitely plays, doesn't play scared. He plays in the contact, but he definitely lacks power. He can be taken down in the backfield and things of that. He's not going to break a bunch of tackles. But as far as his home run ability and his receiving ability is something that you definitely got to pay attention to. I think he's a top end receiving threat too, with the way he's able to run routes, not just his ability to catch. But he's definitely a speed back, and he hits the hole. He can accelerate instantly, and I love his vision too. A lot of people, compare him to LaShawn McCoy, and that's somebody that I would also say he reminds me of in that shifty side to side, looking for a gap and then explode type player. Not my favorite type of running back, but as we've seen, of course, that definitely is a space in the league for that type of system. And so I'm really impressed with Wiley. I think he's going to be more of a late riser, especially after we get through the combine and see what his top speed really is. I got him at a 4.5 speed. I don't think he's in the 4.3 range, but if he can crack that, then the conversation will definitely change about him. Mark Walton, same thing, kind of a speed back, but, 5'9", more of a short scat back. He has less power than Wadley, I would say, very easily taken down in traffic. Balance is just okay. He's all kind of his game is kind of one-dimensional. He does have a lot of ability out of the backfield as a receiver, but as far as a runner, I just think he's got that one-trick pony. And which is okay, because we do live in an age where a lot of people do running back by committee. Now, you do want someone well-rounded, but I think Mark Walton still could have a spot. And I gave him 4.5 speed and agility. It's the same as Wadley, but I think Walton builds up to his top gear. Once he gets in the open field, then he'll hit it to that second gear and eventually get to top speed, whereas Wadley, I think, can get to top speed almost instantly. And then our last guy that I was able to evaluate was Kalen Ballage out of Arizona State. Now, this is an interesting guy, 6'3", 230. And this is why it's tough, especially this year, because there's not a lot of tape and you really want to see as much as you can, because some games are just not great games. But out of this guy, I had one opinion. Then I watched a little bit. I had to go watch some highlights, which I hate doing, but I had to watch some highlights because he didn't have enough tape just to kind of get an idea. And you watch him over the years, and this guy's 6'3", 230, but he's shown the ability to really get fast, and not get fast, but he can run fast in the situation where he's pulled away from a defender. And so that was kind of the question. At first it was like, okay, this is just a big back, doesn't have a lot of agility, just power north and south, but that's not exactly true. He is a downhill runner. He runs with a lot of burst off the initial carry, but he does have some vision, and while his agility isn't great, he does navigate the lanes a little bit. Now, the best part that comes in with his receiving, this guy's a big guy, big frame, big target, pretty almost like a wide receiver. So you watch him and you see that he definitely gives you something a little more with his catch radius, with his ability to go up and get the ball, because he definitely has some explosion. Some that you don't expect from a guy that's big, where he can jump over guys and hurdle over guys and go up and make a catch. And so really his question is the speed. I mean, again, like I said, most of the tape, you see him at about average. And then there's some games you saw where, whoa, where did that come from? So now I'm waiting for the combine to really give me an idea of where he's at with his overall speed. Because if he's a guy that runs in the 4.5s or 4.4s, then the conversation is going to change on him pretty quickly because he'll be a very good asset. I mean, the guy can catch the ball. He definitely can handle people in pass blocking situations. He doesn't have great technique, but he can handle people. And then as a power runner with that type of speed, he'll start getting a lot of love. So, all right, so those are my backs. I mean, don't get it twisted. Saquon is far in ahead of these backs. I just don't think he's this once in a lifetime running back like people are trying to make him out to be. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, between Ronald Jones, Akron Wadley, and I would say Josh Adams, I would say those are the group that's in my second tier. I'm not a big Geis fan as everybody else is, so I like these guys that provide a little more speed and a little more ability in the receiving game. So those kind of are the ones I'm looking at. So let's get to the real grade. We've been talking. I know it's a lot of running backs. We've been talking. All right, so we pull up the Seattle Seahawks from 2015. We see that they have 8 picks. We go down the list. Frank Clark, second round, still with the team, starter. You got third round Tyler Lockett, still with the team as of now. Starter, starting returner and contributor on receiving. Terry Poole, no longer in the league. We got Mark Glenowski is with the Colts, I believe. I think he was with the Seahawks, though, this year. Just signed with the Colts. We got Ty Smith, who is no longer with the team, but still in the league. We got Obum Gwacham, who is no longer with the team, but still in the league. We got Christian Sokoli, who I believe just got out of the league, or at least not on the active roster as of last year, but was prior to those years. And then we got Ryan Murphy, who is still in the league, but not with the team. So out of 8 picks, you have 2 still with your team, and you got 1 that is no longer in the league. And then you got a bunch of people that are still in the league, but not with your team. Nobody of significance, but they, good enough to still stick around. So again, it's good that you weren't picking a bunch of people that's no longer in the league, especially with lower picks. However, when you pick that many picks, 8, because the average is 7, so you got 8 picks, you would want to keep more than just 2. That's a pretty low rate out of 8 picks. Now, the 2 that you kept, Frank Clark, you can't really call him a star. He definitely rotates and he starts that pass rushing group. And Tyler Lockett was maybe you could call him a star returner, but he's not lately been doing much there. I mean, as far as what he was before. And as a receiver, he hasn't really cracked any big time role with that. So the 2 you kept, although they are second and third round picks, aren't huge impacts on your team. So if you only had 2 out of 8, I would say they both had to be almost star level to really justify the draft. But these 2 are just contributors. So then we go down and, like I said, lower round picks that aren't with the team, but they're still in the league. So obviously they had some type of skill. And then if you really dig deep, a lot of these players didn't even make it to the initial roster with the Seahawks the year they were drafted. They ended up getting cut and going somewhere else. So that's these are basically people that never contributed to your team. So that's an issue there too. But overall, I would look at this and it's pretty tough. I would give this a C minus. I'm tempted to go D, but you have to get them credit for having players that are still around, and you definitely got to give them credit that their top 2 selections are still with the team. So I'm going to give it a C-, a generous C-. But Seahawks, as we know what kind of their core comes from, and we can see that this draft wasn't one that really contributed to their success. All right, so that's it for me. Go to the comment section. Please let me know what you think about these running backs. Do you got a favorite? Do you think Saquon Barkley is a next generational talent, as they say? Leave a comment, thumbs up, subscribe, and share it around, please, to all your NFL fans. And thank you for listening.